next year.
It's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast. I am your host, Dave Sterling. With me, second-time guest and friend of the show, Craig Lindahl.
Hey, yeah, it's great. I love being a guest on this show.
Well, we love having you. On location.
Yeah, I'm
from someplace hot, I expect.
I'm in Boca Raton, Florida. A boring insurance type thing. No, it's not boring at all. It's an insurance trip, but I haven't really talked about insurance at all. It's been mostly about the beach and the sun, and it's nice.
Good.
And so my wife gets to listen to me record a live podcast from the hotel room.
She rolling her eyes at every sports take you have because she knows you're full of it.
Pretty much. And if you think you get bored with my takes on the podcast, you should have to share meals with me. I spout them nonstop. Your
insurance takes are even,
it never ends.
More shocking.
It's all about liability, really. No, so I'm trying to figure out. There are some events tomorrow night, which obviously I had no idea was going to interfere with the Cavaliers playoff game when I agreed to come on this trip. But
right.
So now I got to figure out a graceful way to, because I'm not missing the Eastern Conference Finals.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that segues into one thing I'd like to mention. If you guys are interested, Craig and I will be recording a live podcast in Stowe, Ohio, Friday night, and we have altered our schedule so you will not have to miss any playoff basketball. So if you want to come to the Nervous Dog coffee shop in Stowe, we will be starting at 7, and we guarantee to have you out of there in time to go watch the Cavs. And if it is really bad, there's a Panini's a minute away.
Yeah. So we can move the party right after the live podcast. Because I'm not going to have time to get all the way home, so I'll be watching the game right there.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Watch party.
Anyway,
so what are they important events, or is it the social thing after?
Yeah, it's all social. Actually, I got to be honest with you. It's they hired the songstress, the wonderful, not at all past her prime, Pat Benatar.
Wow. This is a highbrow event.
I guess. So I will gracefully find a way to bow out of listening to Pat Benatar so that I can watch LeBron James and your Cleveland Cavaliers battle the Atlanta Hawks. It's a weird thing though, man. Everything feels like bonus right now. I've got no expectations whatsoever for these Cavaliers. I think they can win, but it's not really based on anything. It all feels like a roll of the dice right now.
Well, and you've got your out with Kevin Love hurt and a couple of different people nursing injuries. You've got your, we gave him a good fight, but we couldn't overcome the injuries. You can lose and still feel good about it at this point.
Which a lot of people might confuse for the previous loser mentality of Cleveland sports fans, but it's totally different because it's undeniable. You're right; they do have an out, and it's purely it's not making excuses. It's just that blatant and obvious.
Right. People keep asking me. I don't know why they think I'm some sort of authority on it, predictions. I've got no predictions. I don't know what's going to happen.
I don't either. And because it's all right, well, if LeBron James does LeBron James things, the Hawks have no chance.
Right.
But LeBron James has not done LeBron James things so far in the playoffs, really. And they're still, 8-2 in the playoffs.
Yeah. If you get Delly to score 19 every night, I think they're going to win. Will that happen? I don't think so.
Well, and that's an interesting question too. What are the odds of Matthew Dellavedova putting up another performance like he did in the closeout game against the Bulls? Is it Is it even 20%?
That is such a feel-good story that again, that's not a loser mentality. But if we get rolled by the Hawks, we've still got that Delly game.
I think so too, and I think I'm trying really hard to make this season about like those indelible memories and not worrying so much about what the fates could bring. I'm just trying to enjoy every moment. Even that opening night loss to the Knicks, that night was so special and so amazing downtown that I will not allow the end result of that game ruin it.
Especially since you know what happened to the Knicks shortly after that,
Yeah.
and that you were watching players play that would be Cavs not much
Yeah,
longer. You know,
welcome to Cleveland, JR.
yeah. And again, I'm not bowing out. I think
Well, you and I can talk about it. It's not like we're in the locker room.
that's true. But the just seeing that video of when Delhi got into the locker room and
Yes.
see everybody cheering, every person coming up to him, great. Just I watch it over and over again. And here's the thing, like, despite what everybody says about Delhi, and maybe I'm just delusional, but it seems to me like every sports fan can look at him and go, man, if I would have just put in the effort, I could have been him. Because
I think so.
he's not exceptionally tall. Was he 6'2"?
I think he's 6 foot, 6'1", something like that. Yeah.
I know plenty of guys that height, and so he just gives us this, you know what, that guy just doesn't have all the physical gifts, but
So what
he
you're saying
plays his
is
ass off.
we are all Delhi.
Yeah, Delhi's the everyman. Exactly.
So in addition to the Cavaliers, we were going to bore everybody with our pop culture takes.
Yeah, because I'm not going to bother with any predictions of the Cavs. I just
No.
enjoy the hell out of it. Yeah.
So that being said, Cavs in 6. What? No. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm just going to enjoy it.
Well, I did want to point out, for the Celtics series, after the first game, I really didn't know much about the Celtics, and then found a lot of stuff to hate about them during the first game. So on Waiting for Next Year, I wrote a article on what the best ways to hate the Celtics were. When the Bulls were the team we played next, I had no reason to write that. We already had all the reasons perfectly laid out.
And maybe we've got a couple new chapters, but you're right. It was already set.
Yeah, if I would have written that, everybody would have just said, what's the point? But now with the Hawks, I think some of it started on Twitter a little bit already, of we're searching for reasons to hate the Hawks. And to real basketball purists, there aren't any reasons.
Well, and I was going to say that it really says something about that team that you have to try, because they are. I mean, they're built so much like the Cavaliers the last time LeBron was here. Obviously, they don't have a LeBron, but they're just a really good, uh, solid team that should do well in the regular season.
Yeah,
And they're.
and they did.
I mean,
But
I
they
know
have
some
been
people
having.
hate Al Horford, but I don't know
Well,
why.
I am planning after game one. I'm gonna take some notes and find some good reasons for everybody to rally around and hate them.
Well, and that's the cool thing about the NBA playoffs too, because trust me, by game 3, we're going to despise at least 2 people on that team.
Yep, exactly. Just so happens with the Bulls, they were already picked out for us. But
I had totally forgotten about that phenomenon coming into this year's playoffs. We'd been so far removed from the playoffs in Cleveland with the Cavaliers that I'd forgotten how much you could despise a guy like Kelly Olynyk
yeah,
by the time the series is over.
yeah, all of these playoff experiences from before came rushing back.
Yes.
Again, the thing that's different for me this time around is I'm married this time, and I don't remember.
So there's
It
a lot
being
more hate in your heart.
ouch. No, there is a lot more. Yeah, I'm gonna kind of be gone or busy every other night of the week, which as a single guy didn't really matter all that much. But now I almost feel bad. I mean, my wife has plenty of things she's doing. It's not like Like the one night, she's like, "Oh, good, I have a bunch of stuff to do. Then you will be out of my hair." I'm like, "Oh, well, fine. I guess I will go watch the game."
Yeah, you never want to paint the wife as somebody who's like her evening is dependent on whether or not you are available.
Yeah, because I'm so awesome to hang out with on weeknights. Well, I don't want to disappoint you, but you won't have me around.
You know,
I don't know whatever would you
we
do.
could have caught up on the DVR of SpongeBob SquarePants, but until then, we'll have to let Adult Swim wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
So yeah, she'll be fine.
yeah. So there are a couple big like outrage kind of things happening, and it's very weird for me to kind of experience them without. I mean, because I'm down here and I'm not really on social media all day long. I don't feel like I'm connected to it the way I would normally be, and so it makes me wonder, you know, if the outrage over these few things. I mean, we've got a few big things. The Mad Men finale happened.
Yes.
Louis C.K. did something on Saturday Night Live that had people copying and pasting tweets of mad people. And then we had the Game of Thrones episode that you yourself said that you thought maybe you were done with the show.
Yeah.
So where do
I
you want to start? Let's put an order to them so that we don't just jump into where do
well,
you want to go first?
well, the Louis C.K. thing. I was out of town, so again, I was disconnected from social media because I was doing vacation type things. I watched. He did a monologue on SNL
Hmm.
where he did a joke that didn't quite fly. I thought it was not as much funny, but super true, which is what a lot of Louis C.K.'s act is about, where he essentially said that, you know, what we as a society do to child molesters is the worst thing that you can do to a human. Like, that's the worst life you can have is a caught child molester.
Right,
Uh, uh,
registering and all that. Yeah.
right. And so he said, to the child molester's point of view, it must really be awesome if they still try to do it, even though they know what the consequences are if they get caught. And he got a few gasps and groans, and then social media kind of took off on him. But again, it's a true statement, and he says, not from us, we're all normal, but to them, and it to me it made sense and it was insightful. And sometimes we need to look at things from other people's perspective because it also in no way condones it. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and that's kind of where I come from on it is like in no way did Louis C.K. make the world a safer place for people who like to molest
Right.
children. And
Right.
in no way, shape, or form did he seem like he was a man who's in favor of such a thing. But at the same time, those who want to be sensitive to all victims everywhere at all times think that it should just be a topic that's never broached, I guess.
Right. We must never speak of it.
And I mean, I guess, I've read articles about trigger warnings and all kinds of different things and everything else. And I don't know, man. That's a tough one for me to, I never want to be the guy who says, Louis, maybe you shouldn't write that bit. It's like at a certain point, when the Cavaliers did their video that, that everybody was up in arms about over domestic violence.
Right.
It's kind of like the messenger as much as the message, where you they're a pro sports team, and so you don't really want them out on the fringes, on the edges. You're not gonna stand behind their rights to push the boundaries of taste in comedy.
But yeah, that's where Louis C.K. lives. Like that's his thing.
But I never want to take that aesthetic that has people criticizing the Cavaliers and their mild domestic violence. It was really a Dirty Dancing joke, but regardless, I get that outrage. I don't want to apply that unilaterally across the board to all forms of culture and all messengers within the culture, because then you're taking all the latitude away from somebody who's pretty much recognized as a comic genius like Louis C.K.
Right. And again,
But
I say it again a
it's
lot.
not working in our black and white world,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, we need to have that. We need to have, these are the things you can talk about, these are the things you can't talk about, and you have to apologize if you ever talk about something on the bad list.
Yes. Which and actually that kind of segues straight into the Game of Thrones finale, which, you know, a spoiler alert, if you're not up on Game of Thrones, I don't, whatever. People are talking about it all over, and it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
So if you're not up to date, you don't want to hear more Game of Thrones stuff, you can turn it off now. But so there was a rape scene
Yeah.
in Game of Thrones, and it was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
But and I'm not gonna sit here and try and defend it, but I will say that given The Messenger, this show, Game of Thrones, I was less than surprised.
I've been more disturbed by other things on the show.
Which is
Other
saying a
things
lot.
other things that have happened on the show. The fact that there's the weird mutant guy whose entire identity has been tainted and ruined, not to mention his physical body,
Yeah.
that's just as torturous. You know, my point, and you were referring to it earlier on Facebook that I posted. Not that it wasn't that the specific scene has turned me off of the show. It was uncomfortable, unsatisfying, but I'm starting to think that the show is trading on its goodwill and not actual quality. And
And that's
it's
fair. That's a I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I'm there yet, but it's an interesting point, and it's something worth considering, because anytime you have a show like this that really does take an anachronistic kind of a standard, a storyline that's anachronistic in today's day, and it brings that old brutality back to an age where we're totally not used to it anymore.
uh-huh.
There is a tendency, or maybe a willingness to deal in just shock value and trying to shock people, and that's not the if you're not furthering the story, if it's not serving a purpose of entertainment at some point, you can use brutal things and still entertain people. Because I mean, I love horror movies, but even those have to find a way of still being tasteful, if that's even possible for me to say.
Yeah, my thoughts on the Game of Thrones thing is there are series that go through a mid-season lull of, you understand that they're producing, 13 episodes, and they need to save some resources, both writing and monetary, for the end and the beginning and all this stuff. Sometimes there are episodes that are just not as exciting as other ones. But at this point, we're 4 in a row of Game of Thrones where they just haven't been all that great. Not much has happened. And the stuff that has happened is kind of predictable and stuff we've already seen. So, Tyrion got captured and then talked his way out of it. And then, they got captured again, but look, he talked his way out of it. And I don't know. It's
Hey, look, Jaime Lannister is going to fight left-handed.
right, exactly. And they set up the sand snakes or whatever.
Yep.
Like, look, these 3 badass chicks are going to go out and kick some ass, and they have a lame fight for 5 minutes, and then it's over. And it's I don't know if it's because of the liberties that they've taken in the past. I don't trust this show like I do a Breaking Bad or a Mad Men or stuff like that, to go, you know what? I know they're building to something.
Well, and this kind of goes back to my storyline with the whole show as it is, because Jen and I started watching that show, and then we quit because we didn't think it was entertaining enough. And from week to week, it was kind of like, I don't know. And it was, I felt like the nudity was unnecessary. Not that I'm like a prude, but it just felt like it was all gratuitous.
No, it was total HBO nudity. It was like, oh, here's your HBO contract. Who's going to be nude?
So then after 3 or 4 seasons or however many seasons were built up, we decided, all right, well, everybody loves the show. We're going to give it another shot. And all of a sudden you've got 4 or 5 seasons in the can just waiting to be watched. And that the show was great to marathon watch. And maybe that's really the problem is these seasons need to live as 10-hour arcs and not as hour to hour, week to week.
Yeah, exactly. It's
because you wouldn't care if this was just another scene and you could hit the next button and watch the next episode.
right.
But this
The
is a
fact that that's
1 week
the last.
cliffhanger.
Yeah, that's the last thing you saw.
Yeah. And it was brutal. I don't, you know, I guess I'm not ready to, drop a hammer of judgment on the entire show because of that one brutal scene, just because it's unsurprising to me. Like I was certainly shocked by it, but I wasn't shocked by it, if that makes sense.
Well, the more offensive thing to me was that it didn't make sense. Everyone knew that was going to happen. Every character who was involved with that whole situation knew that was going to happen.
Well, the surprise was making what's his name stand in the corner.
Right, but still, like,
and that's how they finished the episode.
Right, but Littlefinger or whatever. Oh, here's our plan. We're going to do this. You're going to marry this creepy guy.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone should have known right then. You know what? Bad stuff is going to happen if we go through with this plan. And they went, yeah, it probably will. And then everything just happened.
Yeah.
Like everything. It was the world's most preventable thing.
Well,
that's why it was frustrating to me.
And the one concept that I keep reading about, which makes me think, and I haven't come to my own opinion on it yet, but I know I've talked this way about other shows, but Andy Greenwald from Grantland was talking about how certain shows earn their latitude. And in a lot of ways, I kind of agree that maybe this season of Game of Thrones hasn't earned the kind of latitude that they've used in the last few episodes. And so it's interesting that you bring up the last 3 or 4 episodes as an individual middling arc of the season. And also it's an interesting point to try and figure out, what they've earned or not earned in their individual season.
My friend Dylan said the same thing of they're playing too heavily and counting on the dynamic between the book readers and the show watchers, that they know they're going to get a lot of this discussion and talk between various people about what did this mean, what did that mean, and so they're kind of taking advantage of that, but not then performing as well as they should with that. They're kind of riding on that they're going to get good ratings because they've got this built-in conversation already started.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It was never my favorite show. I always enjoyed it. But and this is dumb. It's only because I do a movie podcast. But, like, just one of the scenes, they're walking along, Tyrion's saying something, and then you can clearly hear that it's a different voice. It's his voice, but it recorded ADR, and they didn't do a great job of splicing it in and making it sound the same. And it's like, oh, well, that kind of takes me out of my fantasy world when I know that they ADR'd this scene and have him saying something different than they originally did.
Yeah. Well, and
it's like the craft is still important to me.
Well, and while you're on that topic, I don't know who decided that those scenes in the temple with all the faces. I get why you'd want a dark scene, but there is something such as too dark where I can't make anything out on my television, and I've got a nice TV.
I thought it was just my TV.
I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, I couldn't see anything either, and you're exactly right.
It's a horrible production choice.
Well, and this is another thing that Dylan said that I didn't even think about. They didn't want to pay to show it.
Oh.
They didn't want to pay to computer animate all this stuff. Which, finances are a big part of it.
Especially once you get this far into this many seasons and the actors are all their scales have all gone up 2, 3 times probably. They went from unknowns to being these ridiculously famous people. I mean,
That girl from Game of Thrones.
we
Yeah.
we saw the same thing with Battlestar Galactica, and it's such a shame. Like, not that people shouldn't make money off of the success of a show, but it's like, Starbuck was one of the stars of that show, and I hate to trash her, but I mean, what has she done since? So she
Right.
she she cashed in as that production budget flew over the top, but it was for what?
Well, the thing that this kind of leads me into the other topic we're going to talk about, which was the Mad Men finale
Hmm.
on the Waiting for Next Year TV podcast. Um, this whole second, they called it a half season or whatever. I'm calling it the last season. You could tell, like the last Breaking Bad season,
Hmm.
when it was done, I was ready for it to be done, and it was kind of a relief because of how much tension it caused. And okay, they wrapped it all up. I'm done. I'm ready for it to be done. I was kind of sad that it was over, but it seemed complete, and I was ready
Yeah.
to be done with it. I wasn't craving more and more and more. But the storyline of Mad Men and the setup of having this ad agency could have been an infinite show to me. There's always new stuff to explore with these characters and an ad agency and the time period and all that. I really thought the last season was really, really great. And you could tell that the people involved were all having a good time making it. Like, just the whole spirit of the thing. You could tell everybody was really enjoying themselves as they made these final episodes. And when we got to the end of that one, I was like, man, I wish there was more of this. But
See,
alas.
I loved it because they did whatever they did with Don, which has been talked about all over the place. But it was so satisfying the way they wrapped up all the other characters. It was so
Yes.
satisfying. I loved it.
Yeah. It had all sorts of different emotions. And that's one thing about the Game of Thrones. Similar to the scene in the Dark Dungeon, you got to throw some light in there. But what positive thing happened in that episode of Game of Thrones?
Yeah, nothing.
Pretty much nothing. So in this one,
The dwarf didn't die.
Right. So you have this tragic scene where
By the way,
Don
I
is
just
talking.
want to apologize to anybody who's offended by my use of the word dwarf. It's the word that they use in the show.
It is the word they use in this.
It wasn't me as so much as referring to the word that they actually used in the show. So, but I apologize to anybody I might have offended.
Good.
I don't even know if that's an offensive word.
We have all these range of emotion. I'm just going to skip it. I'm Brian Spathing you. We have all these ranges of emotion. This tragic scene between Don and Betty, as she pretty much says, yeah, I'm going to die, but I don't want you to come back here because it's going to be bad for the kids and bad for me and bad for everybody. Just stay away like you have been.
They're already used to you being gone.
Right. And it's super tragic and super sad. And then you've got I've read that some people thought it was a little cheesy, but the stuff between Stan and Peggy at the end, I really liked that.
I did too.
I really liked the stuff with Joan, and as much as people hated Pete Campbell, seeing him have a happy ending.
Well, he grew up so much and he changed so much.
Agreed. But yeah, I like you said, I really like where they put each character. And one of the other things that I had read about was, I think this was John Hamm talking. Some people complained that some of the endings were too happy, but if you think about it, those stories aren't over in the sense of if you're imagining these stories, they could continue everywhere. Pete might get fired from Learjet. Joan's business might not be successful.
Or it might be successful and she might never find a guy,
Right. So he's like, these are the last snapshots you got of it, but they're not necessarily all rosy endings. They just have good places right now.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I have no problem with the ending. I really don't. I mean, enough good and bad things happen to different people over the course of time. And I would say that any of the happy ending stuff was all I didn't feel like Don's ending was all that happy, to be honest with you.
No, it wasn't. I agree with you.
I mean, maybe he thinks he's happy in that world or whatever, but as a viewer, it's kind of more of the same. He's become like this stagnant kind of cautionary tale almost. I know he's wildly rich and successful, but I mean, he's going through life alone now. And
right.
There's no idea that he's not going to be alone at the end of time.
Right, and the phone call that he had previously just had was the wreckage of his former life calling to tell him that, yeah, that stuff you ruined is still ruined. And as much as you want to go out on the road and drive a Camaro in the salt flats, you still have this wreckage burning back at home.
And just because I'm dying doesn't mean that we should change the dynamic where they see you once every 3 weeks. At least they should have one thing consistent in their life, which is you being inconsistent.
Right.
It was just
that was brutal, but so honest.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's another thing. You want to talk about a character that fell off the face of the earth and I couldn't stand, but then somehow managed to find herself on her deathbed.
Yeah.
Betty Draper, man, because I mean, it's unbelievable to me how she disappeared throughout the storyline, and then they were able to bring her back, get her back. I mean, it's not like she quit the show for a while, but they made an artistic choice to practically write her out of the show for episodes on end.
Yeah. Yeah, it was...
You watch season 1, you never expect her to disappear.
Right. She's practically the main character.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, well, anyway, I thank you for running the show.
Yeah, no problem.
In
no
my
problem.
absence.
Good to catch up with you.
Yeah, and it always feels good to get a podcast done when there are all these different things floating around. I feel like I don't, I say them over and over again, but they're not completely out of my head until I lay them down on a podcast. Which is a really
they're still
weird
floating
way to
in
be.
there. Yeah, it is. Have I talked about that yet? Yeah. I would want to encourage any listeners that would have any interest in seeing a live podcast, which we're still working on some of the nuts and bolts. There will be some interaction with, people. We're not just going to sit there and talk in front of microphones and make you sit there quietly and then probably watch the Cavs game with us. Stowe, Ohio, the Nervous Dog Coffee Bar. If you go to the Waiting for Next Year Facebook page, we'll post the event. And you could RSVP so we can see if anybody's going to come.
Yeah, even if it's just a few people. It's always fun to meet people like for real instead of just on Twitter and in comment sections and whatever else.
Yeah, so, exactly.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so that is Friday before the Cavs playoff game, I assure you.
And who knows? Maybe between now and then we'll find a special guest. It's not like
Perhaps.
It's not like we haven't been looking, at least a little bit.
A little bit.
So.
Well, you should go and go for a night swim, and
yeah, I really should. I should.
It should be pretty nice.
All right. Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. This has been the WaitingForNextYear.com podcast.